The secret double life of an avoidant starts right where you always doubt yourself the most, in that gap between what you feel and what you see. On the surface, they look so calm, so measured, almost emotionally uninterested. They reply when they feel like it. They keep conversations short. They rarely initiate deep talks, and when they do, the next day they can act as if nothing special happened. You end up asking yourself, am I imagining this connection? Is it all in my head? But deep down, you can feel something else, a weight, a pull, a familiarity you can't explain. That's because while they're moving slowly on the outside, inside they have already started using you as an emotional anchor. You become the person they think about when something big happens, the one whose opinion matters more than they'll ever admit, the name that sits in the back of their mind, even when they're pretending to be detached. Their behavior looks like distance, but their nervous system has already bookmarked you as important, and they hate how much control that seems to give you over their feelings. Avoidant people learned long ago that needing someone is dangerous. Maybe they opened up once and were betrayed, mocked, controlled, or abandoned. Maybe they grew up in an environment where vulnerability was treated as weakness. So they built an identity around, I don't need anyone, I'm fine on my own. That story is their armor. When they meet you and feel something real, their first instinct is not to lean into it, but to manage it. They manage it by keeping you at arm's length, by controlling the speed of the connection, by acting like they could take it or leave it. On the outside, that looks like low investment. On the inside, they are constantly monitoring you. They notice if your tone is slightly different today. They replay your last voice note. They remember the way you reacted when they went quiet. They may not flood you with words, but they silently build an internal map of who you are and what you mean to them. You're not just another chat or another person. You're the one they now unconsciously rely on for a sense of stability. But if you ask them directly, do you need me? Their ego will take over and deny it, because admitting need feels like handing you a weapon. The emotional anchor side of them shows up in the small, subtle habits they'll never label as attachment. Notice how they might not text all day, but the moment something stressful or exciting happens, it's you they think to message, or even if they don't reach out, they rehearse what they would say to you in their mind. Notice how they may not shower you with compliments, but they pick up on your moods. They know when something is off with you even when you try to hide it, because they are more tuned in than they act. Notice how your withdrawal hits them harder than they pretend. If you stop initiating, if your energy changes, they feel a strange emptiness they can't quite name. They'll tell themselves, I just miss talking to someone. But it's not someone. It's you specifically, your way of understanding them, your particular presence. Yet they will rarely say, I miss you, because those words expose the truth their entire avoidance strategy is designed to hide, that you matter to them on a level they cannot control. This is the double life. The outside is curated, minimal, controlled. The inside is layered, intense, and secretly dependent. They use you as an emotional anchor in the sense that your existence calms them. Knowing you're there, knowing you'd answer, knowing you still care, lets them wander off emotionally without fully disconnecting. They assume you'll stay in orbit around them, even if they drift. They lean on the idea of you, even when they're not leaning on you physically or verbally. You become the safe point in their mental map, the person they trust to still be there when they feel like coming closer again. And that illusion of your permanent availability is exactly what allows them to move so slowly and act so detached. They get to enjoy the comfort of your anchor without openly acknowledging that they're using it, because acknowledgement would mean responsibility. Responsibility would mean effort, and effort would mean facing their fear of actually showing you how much space you already occupy inside them. There's a reason your timing with an avoidant always feels off, and it's not because you're needy or too much. It's because you and they are chasing two completely different feelings. You are craving clarity. You want to know where you stand, what this is, what they feel, whether you're safe to invest more of your heart. You want transparency, momentum, emotional honesty. That's what intimacy feels like to you. But they are craving control. Control over how much they feel at once. Control over how vulnerable they become. Control over when and how things deepen so they don't feel overwhelmed. You are looking for a place to land. They are looking for an emergency exit, just in case. So the exact moments that feel, finally, we're getting somewhere, to you are the exact moments that feel, this is getting too real, to them. You want to accelerate, they want to hit the brakes. You're not out of sync because something is wrong with you. You're out of sync because your nervous systems are chasing opposite kinds of safety. When the connection feels good, you naturally want more of it. You want longer conversations, more presence, more plans, more consistency. You read emotional momentum as a green light. We're closer, this is good, let's deepen it. For an avoidant, that same momentum often feels like a yellow flashing warning sign. They read that closeness as, I'm losing my independence, or I'm slipping into something I can't control. So they start subtly regulating the pace. A little more silence here, a shorter reply there, a last-minute cancel, a busy, weak. Not necessarily because they've lost interest, but because they are trying to put emotional space between themselves and the rising intensity they feel with you. To you it looks like we shared something beautiful yesterday. Why are they distant today? To them it feels like I didn't mean to open that much. I need to regain my balance or I'll drown. Your heart experiences that as rejection, their system experiences it as self-defense. Think of how many times this has played out. You have a deep conversation where they're vulnerable in a way you've never seen before. They tell you about their childhood, their fears, the way they see the world. You walk away feeling connected, cherished, chosen. You think, we're finally broke through. The next day they're cooler, quieter, less available. They take longer to respond, they change the topic, they avoid revisiting anything emotional. You immediately spiral into, did I do something wrong? Did I push too far? Did they fake it? But what's really happening is their internal alarm has gone off. The part of them that attaches is awake, but so is the part of them that remembers. The last time I let someone this close, I got hurt. So instead of building on the beautiful moment, they try to dilute it. They slow down, they re-establish distance, you feel abandoned. They feel relieved. Two people sitting in the same story having completely different emotional experiences. Your craving for clarity will tempt you to demand answers in those moments. What are we? Why are you acting different? Do you care about me or not? You want a straight line you can follow, so you push for definitions, promises, certainty. An avoidant hears those questions not as a desire for emotional safety, but as pressure and potential loss of control. The more you press, the more trapped they feel. The more trapped they feel, the more their instinct is to escape, not because they don't feel anything, but because they don't know how to manage what they feel without losing themselves. So your pursuit of clarity accidentally triggers their need for control, and suddenly you're in a tug of war. You pull for closeness, they pull for space. You think, if I could just explain myself better, if I could just show them I'm safe, they'd stop pulling away. But every extra explanation, every repeated conversation, every attempt to pin down the relationship in words can start to feel like emotional pressure to someone whose core fear is being trapped. This is why timing with an avoidant feels like trying to dance with someone who keeps changing the rhythm. When you step forward, they step back. When you step back, sometimes they step forward, because they start to miss the clarity and warmth you bring. It's maddening because it makes you feel like you're always one adjustment away from finally sensing up, when in reality the mismatch isn't in your effort, it's in what each of you thinks safe feels like. Safety for you is certainty. Safety for them is autonomy. Until you understand that, you'll keep taking their need for control as proof of their lack of feelings, and they'll keep taking your need for clarity as proof that closeness is dangerous. The moment you stop personalizing that gap and start seeing it as a clash of nervous systems, everything gets clearer. You stop trying to force them into your pace, and you stop letting their pace convince you that you're unworthy of clear, calm, consistent love. There is a whole secret timeline inside an avoidant's heart that you never get to see, and if you could watch it play out, you would stop doubting yourself so much, because their attachment does not show up the way yours does. It unfolds in quiet stages they would never admit out loud. First they watch you, then they lean on you, and then they quietly depend on you while insisting to themselves and everyone else that they're not that invested. It starts with observation. Long before they ever let you know how much you matter, they are studying you, not in a creepy way, but in a survival way. They notice how you react when plans change. They watch how you handle conflict. They clock how you talk about your exes, your family, your dreams. To you it feels casual, to them it's data, because their nervous system does not trust easily, especially not the people they feel drawn to, so they hang back. They keep the conversations lighter than they feel. They show you just enough, but never everything, and from the outside you think, maybe they're not that into this, when in reality they are gathering proof. Can this person hurt me like the others did? Or are they actually different? That first stage is made of 1,000 small tests you don't even know you're passing or failing. They watch how you handle their silence, their mood dips, their honest moments, and every time you respond with patience, steadiness, or authenticity, A tiny brick of trust gets laid down inside them, not enough to build a house yet, but enough to mark you as someone who stands out in a world where they mostly feel misunderstood. Then the second stage begins. The leaning. This is where the double life really starts, because on the surface they might still be slow to reply or allergic to labels. But underneath, they are quietly shifting some of their emotional weight onto you. They start to reach out more when something happens. Maybe they send you a meme when they're stressed. Maybe they vent about a bad day. Maybe they ask your opinion on a decision. And it looks small, but for them it's huge. Because it means they are letting your voice into their inner world. They start to feel a strange comfort when they see your name light up their phone. They feel steadier after talking to you. They feel seen when you remember something they told you weeks ago. They notice that their shoulders drop a little when they hear your voice. All of this is happening in their body while their mouth still says things like, "I'm not really looking for anything serious," or "I'm just going with the flow." They lean on your emotional presence but protect their ego with casual language. And that mismatch is what makes you feel crazy, because your body can feel their attachment, your intuition knows their energy shifts around you. But their words keep trying to keep everything small and undefined. So you end up questioning your reality instead of seeing what's actually happening. They have started to use you as a safe place, even if they refuse to label you as such. The third stage is dependence, the one they deny the most. This is when your absence starts to sting more than your presence, when a day without hearing from you feels off, when they notice their mood drop if they think you're pulling away. Again, they may not tell you this, but you'll see it in the glitches, in the way they randomly pop up when you've gone quiet, in the way they react just a little sharper, colder, or more sarcastically when you mention other people, in the way they bring up small details you mentioned just to see if you'll expand. They are now emotionally invested whether they like it or not. You've become part of the structure that holds their life together, the person they imagine telling good news to, the person they silently hope will still be around in a month, 6 months, a year, but dependence is their deepest trigger, because it mirrors all the old stories of, "If I need you, you can hurt me." So instead of saying, "I need you," they manage the intensity by controlling the visibility of it. They might go a little quieter when they feel too attached. They might avoid future talk right after a close moment. They might give you just enough to keep you there, but not enough to feel fully exposed. And when you ask them directly how they feel, they will often minimize it, not because it's not real, but because naming it makes it real in a way that terrifies them. So they protect their ego with, "I'm chill, we're just seeing where it goes," while privately checking if you viewed their story, rereading your texts, and noticing every little shift in your tone. Their attachment builds in silence, beneath their need to appear in control. And the tragedy is that by the time they are deeply attached, you are usually exhausted from guessing, so you walk away thinking you imagined everything. And they are left holding an intensity they never learned how to share, obsessing over the one person they spent the entire relationship pretending they could live without. There is a moment in every connection with an avoidant where everything feels like it's finally coming together for you and falling apart for them. And that moment is when closeness starts to feel like a trap in their body. You experience deepening intimacy as relief, as finally, we're getting somewhere, finally this is becoming real. But their nervous system experiences that same deepening as danger. As if I keep going, I could lose myself, I could get hurt, I could be controlled or abandoned again. So while your heart is opening, their alarm bells are ringing. This is why you often see a strange pattern. After an incredible night together, a deep conversation, a weekend where they seemed fully present and loving, they suddenly go quiet, distant, or cold. You replay the last interaction, searching for what you said wrong, how you might have ruined it. But most of the time, the problem isn't what you did, it's how much they felt. To them, intensity and pain are wired together, so when they start to really attach, their body remembers old stories long before their mind can explain what's happening. Imagine their history like a script written into their nervous system. Maybe when they got close to someone in the past, that person became controlling, demanding, or emotionally unstable. Maybe they opened up and were mocked, ignored, or abandoned. Maybe their caregivers were hot and cold, loving one moment and rejecting the next. The lesson their system learned was simple. The more I need someone, the more power they have to hurt me. The more I depend on someone, the easier it is for my world to collapse when they leave or change. So now, as an adult, the rising feeling of, wow, I really care about this person, doesn't feel soft and safe. It feels like standing on the edge of a cliff again. They may be sitting across from you, laughing, sharing, touching you like you mean everything, but a part of them is already scanning for exits. It's not that they don't enjoy the closeness, it's that they don't trust it to last. And instead of saying, "I'm scared," they instinctively create distance so they can breathe. You see this most clearly right after high intimacy moments. You have that late night talk where they finally tell you about their childhood or their fears, and you feel blessed, chosen, special. You go to bed thinking, this is finally going somewhere deep. Meanwhile, they go home and lie in bed with their heart racing for a different reason. They're thinking, I showed too much, I opened too far. If they really see me, they can really hurt me. And that fear starts whispering, slow down, pull back, regain control. So the next day, instead of building on that vulnerability, they might text less, keep things surface level, or act like nothing significant happened, not because it meant nothing, but because it meant too much. Their distance is a regulation strategy. If they can bring the intensity down, they feel safer. But you experience that regulation as rejection, which triggers your own anxiety. And suddenly you're reaching more, asking more, pushing for reassurance, which only makes their alarms even louder. When closeness feels like a trap, every step forward demands some kind of escape hatch. This is why avoidants often insist on phrases like, no labels, no pressure. Let's just see where it goes. Even when their behavior with you looks very much like a relationship. Those phrases are not really about you. They are emergency exits they keep in their mind, a way to tell themselves, if this hurts, I can still say I never promised anything, I can still run. The deeper they feel for you, the more they need those exits to calm their fear. So paradoxically, the more attached they become inside, the more controlled, distant, or ambiguous they may act outside. You watch them carefully and think, if you care, why won't you just let us be close? They're silently thinking, if I let us be close, what happens to me if you leave or change or need more than I can give? In their world, dependence equals danger, so they try to hold their feelings with one hand and keep the door half open with the other. Pay attention to the way they often sabotage when things are going well. They might pick small fights, disappear for a few days after an especially loving time, or suddenly throw out a line like, you know I'm bad at relationships, just when you start feeling secure. That's not random, that's their fear trying to loosen the emotional grip you have on them. They believe that if they lower your expectations or cool the temperature, they can avoid the pain they've come to associate with being fully in. You feel that as mixed signals. They feel it as survival. And because they aren't usually fully aware of this pattern, they'll tell themselves stories to justify it. I'm just busy. I'm just not ready. It's not the right time. Anything but admitting, I'm terrified because I actually care about you. Understanding this doesn't mean you should tolerate endless push-pull, but it does mean you stop taking every retreat so personally. Very often, their pulling away is not a commentary on your value, it's a commentary on their capacity. The moment they start to really attach is often the exact moment they run, not because you are unworthy, but because attachment itself feels like a threat. That's the tragedy and the truth of their psychology. Their heart reaches for what their fear keeps pushing away. And if you don't know this, you'll keep shrinking yourself, begging, over-proving, trying to make closeness feel less scary for them by abandoning your own needs, when the reality is, their alarms are their responsibility to heal, not your job to silence at the cost of your sanity. One of the most confusing experiences you will ever have with an avoidant is this: your body can feel that they're hooked on you, but their behavior keeps trying to convince you they're casual and detached, and you end up doubting your own intuition. So let's strip the confusion away and call out what's really happening when an avoidant is secretly attached. The first sign is the way they remember things you barely remember saying. You'll casually mention a random childhood memory, a favorite snack, a tiny insecurity about your laugh, or how you like your coffee, and weeks later they'll bring it up out of nowhere. They'll show up with that snack, repeat a phrase you once said, or reference a joke you made one time. They don't do that because they're nice. They do that because their mind has started bookmarking you. An avoidant who is not invested forgets details. An avoidant who is emotionally hooked stores information about you like files, because you are now part of their inner world, whether they admit it or not. On the surface, they'll shrug like it's no big deal, but people do not memorize the small print of someone they don't care about. Then there's their relationship with your online presence. An avoidant in denial will often orbit your social media like a moon around a planet, close enough to feel your gravity, far enough to pretend they're free. They'll watch your stories but rarely react. They might not like your posts, but they'll be among the first viewers. They will accidentally view your content and somehow never miss an update. This is not random scrolling. This is silent monitoring. They want to know what's going on with you without having to risk the exposure of saying, "I miss you," or "I'm thinking about you." Their ego needs the illusion that they're simply keeping an eye on things. But the truth is they are regulating their own anxiety by making sure you're still there, still alive in their orbit, still reachable if they ever decide to step closer. When you post something that hints at distance, change, or moving on, they feel it like a small punch in the gut, even if they never show it. Another huge sign is the way they randomly show up when you pull back. Notice how their timing shifts when your energy changes. Maybe you've stopped texting first. Maybe your replies are a bit slower. Maybe you've started focusing more on your own life and less on their emotional weather. Suddenly, here they come with a message, a meme, "How have you been?" A comment that seems casual, but arrives with perfect emotional timing. It's not coincidence. Their nervous system is tracking the loss of your attention. When the stream of energy they've grown used to begins to dry up, they feel the emptiness, and their instinct is to throw a stone in the water just to see if it still ripples. It may not look like full-blown chasing, but it is a check rooted in attachment. Are you still there for me? Do I still matter to you? They will code it as light and friendly, but underneath there is a tremor of panic at the thought of you being truly gone. Jealousy is another giveaway, though an avoidant will rarely label it that. Watch how they react when you mention other people. They might become slightly sarcastic, make dismissive comments, or pretend to be unbothered while their face tightens or their responses get shorter. They may joke, "Oh, you've got options now," or downplay the conversation with, "That's cool, do what you want." But the energy shifts. You feel a tiny edge, an almost imperceptible sting. That's their attachment flaring up and their ego racing to smooth it over. They don't want to look possessive because that would expose how much they care. So instead they wear indifference like a mask, but their irritation betrays them. People who don't care don't need to disguise discomfort. They simply don't feel it. There's also the way they keep replaying shared moments. They'll circle back to memories you made together, referencing that one road trip, that silly argument that turned into a late-night laugh, that moment you helped them through something hard. They'll bring it up casually, like, "Remember when we," as if it's just small talk, but internally those memories are their proof that what you had or have is real. Avoidants attach to the feeling of safety more than the label of a relationship, so when they are secretly hooked, they anchor themselves to the emotional history you share. Those replayed moments are their way of checking, "Is that still there between us?" without asking it directly. Most of all, an avoidant who's secretly obsessed will start organizing their life around you in ways they won't name. They may alter their routine to be available at times you usually call. They may avoid making plans that clash with your rhythms. They may think about how a choice will look in your eyes before they make it. You're present in their mental background like a constant tab open on their browser. They won't call it love. They might not even call it attachment, but their behavior quietly revolves around not losing access to you. And that's the biggest sign of all when your presence, your opinion, your availability start to shape their inner world, even while their mouth is still saying, "I'm just chill. It's not that deep." That contradiction is not your imagination. It's proof that their heart is far more invested than their ego is willing to admit. There comes a moment in your story with an avoidant where the spotlight quietly shifts, and they can no longer hide behind their patterns because you are no longer playing your old role. For the longest time, you've been the rescuer, the emotional paramedic, the one who rushes in every time there's a disconnect, misunderstanding, or cold spell. You soothe, you explain, you overgive, you bend yourself in half to keep the connection from breaking. And because you keep doing that, their slow bonding, intense, attaching psychology stays safely in the shadows. They get to feel all the benefits of being attached to you without ever having to fully face or own it. But the second you stop rescuing and over-giving, something powerful happens. It exposes the truth they've been hiding from you and from themselves. Suddenly, their distance is no longer being covered by your effort. Their avoidance is no longer softened by your explanations. Their silence now echoes instead of being filled with your paragraphs. And in that echo, they are confronted with a choice they cannot dodge: step up into real love, or lose the one person who truly understood them. When you stop rescuing, you stop jumping in to fix every wobble in the connection. You stop sending follow-up messages when they go quiet. You stop rewriting your needs in smaller and smaller fonts just so they don't feel pressured. You stop being the emotional translator for them, explaining their behavior to yourself, to your friends, even back to them. You stop covering for them. If they're inconsistent, it simply looks inconsistent. If they disappear, it simply looks like disappearing. If they don't prioritize you, it simply looks like not being prioritized. Without your constant cushioning, the raw truth of their behavior stands alone, and that raw truth is confronting because deep inside, they know how much space you've been holding for them. They know you've been understanding them at a depth most people never do. They know you saw their fear, their wounds, their triggers, and instead of judging them, you tried to love them through it. When someone like that stops over-giving, it shakes their perception of themselves. They're no longer the one in control of the connection. They're the one at risk of losing something rare. Avoidants are comfortable in the gray area, that space where things are almost, but not fully defined, where they can attach without having to commit, where they can rely on you without openly admitting they do. Your over-giving has helped maintain that gray area. Every time you chased, you reassured their ego, you're still wanted. Every time you softened the impact of their withdrawal, you kept the illusion alive. Nothing's really at risk here. When you pull your energy back and start giving only what is reciprocated, the gray area starts to evaporate. The connection becomes very clear. Either there is mutual effort or there isn't. Either they come forward or there is distance. Either they meet you in the middle or the space between you grows. And because you're no longer filling that space, they can see the gap they created. Their hidden psychology is slow to bond, but intense once attached, is suddenly in the open, because now they are the one feeling the loss, the imbalance, the risk. In that exposed space, they face the uncomfortable choice they've been dodging for years. If they do nothing, if they stay in old patterns, if they keep telling themselves the same stories, I'm just not good at relationships. I don't need anyone. It's not that serious. They already know what happens next. They lose you. Not as a dramatic performance, not as a threat, but as a natural consequence. You will keep moving. You will keep healing. You will keep growing into someone who no longer has space for one-sided emotional labor. That reality terrifies the part of them that has attached deeply to you, the part that counted on you as their emotional anchor, their safe place, their secret home. So now the question becomes, are they willing to do the hard, uncomfortable work that real love requires, or are they going to retreat back into the safety of their old identity and watch you walk away? If they choose to step up into real love, it won't look like perfection, it will look like effort. It will look like clumsy honesty. I'm scared, but I don't want to lose you. It will look like small acts of consistency, showing up when they say they will, responding instead of disappearing, staying in the conversation when it feels vulnerable. It will look like them taking responsibility for their patterns instead of asking you to absorb all the impact. And if they can't or won't do that, if they cling to avoidance more tightly than they reach for you, then yes, they lose the one person who truly understood them. They lose the mirror that reflected their depth instead of just their defenses. They lose the chance to experience a love where they were seen in 360 degrees and still chosen. But here is the part that matters most for you. Either way, you win, because the moment you stop rescuing and overgiving, you step out of the role that was slowly breaking you and into the role you were always meant to inhabit. The one where your love is powerful, but it is not a replacement for someone else's courage.